Hi. Uh, I'm Helene Russell, and this is a short video on the reading I asked you to do, Hispanic Women, by Isasi Diaz and Yolanda Tarango. And we will begin in just a moment here. Okay. So Hispanic Women, Prophetic Voice in the Church. This is on Latina or Mujerista Liberation Theology. Our authors for this short reading, and remember this reading is done for the discussion about methodology. So what is the method for doing theology? So I want you to reflect upon that and think about that and the importance of experience and other elements that go into the creation and the construction of thinking theologically from the perspective of Latina Mujerista theologians. So this is the authors here are Isasi Diaz, who's very well known, and she's written many things and very beloved, and Yolanda Tarango, who, and I love that picture of her. She just looks like she's up to something. So a word about language first. So the term Hispanic, which is the title of this book, Hispanic, is now often not used. It's not a preferred term, but rather Latina or Latino culture is used. The term is used. And Isasi Diaz and Tarango use the term Hispanic, by which they refer to all women whose heritage includes Spanish, Native American, which they call Amerindian, and African, or some kind of combination of those. They name the name that they use with this term refers to Cuban Americans, Mexican Americans, and Puerto Rican Americans. Today, we might revise the terms and we might expand the population as well that's engaged here to include all women of Latin and South American descent. And we also might use the term that the Isasi Diaz uses later on, which is mujerista. So now the source of Latin American women's theology is the lived experience of Latina women. Now, this is particularly emphasized, so note this, the lived experience of Latina women. Now, she explores what these sources are. So this is the primary source. Another source, of course, is the Bible and the religious experience. So when she says lived experience, that includes religious experience, but also includes the sources that we might also reflect upon, which for her we'll get to in just a second. Include, well, I'll just name them now. So it includes the individual experience, but the communal experience and the experience together, as well as the work of Christianity that's known through the Bible and church tradition, and in particular, emphasis upon popular religiosity and popular religiosity in these particular communities and areas, which may be different than popular Christianity. Christianity may be understood differently in different cultures and different communities and different churches. So I want you to attend to that and think about the difference that might make. So she names there's three lenses. She explores this through three lenses. The first one is the existential lens, and that is both the literal and the political survival of the community. Notice that it's not just of the women, nor of a particular woman, but rather the community at large. And it is the survival for the community is very important for the sake of the children's health and their future dreams. So a lot of the focus here is on how to make things better for the children, how to make things better for the next generation, and not just for health and survival, but also for future dreams, and who knows what that might entail. The opportunities and the openness to being creative and to growing and changing. what those thoughts might be and dreams might entail. The second lens is the religious lens. And this includes the critical reflection upon one's own experiences and one's own values and needs in life, and the basic principles that one lives one's life out of, that get worked out in light of, and here's the important point to keep in mind here, of a combination of Christianity, by which she refers to Christianity. She's really focused on what the Bible has to say, but that's even less important than what's going on in the church experience, in the liturgy and in the tradition, the stories about saints and important folks in the church. And that's combined with the popular religiosity of the culture. Some of that is incorporated into the expression in the churches of Christianity. And this includes both the past and the present. And then the third lens is the cultural lens. This is Latina culture and Latino culture, and how Latina culture and religion, Christianity, have a symbiotic relationship. And together, they create a symbolic system that provides meaning and value and also norms by which interpretation occurs and is judged. Remember, norms are the criteria by which an individual's experience or something that happens just once can be judged as in terms of whether it's valid to be part of as a source of new religious experience or religious values, religious in theology. Now, there is a common experience of the struggle against sexism, against ethnic prejudice, and against poverty. Latino women's own labor. So often many Latino women in America, the primary source of money is their own labor. It remains their primary asset. The survival of individuals and families is particularly important, but also of value is the ethnic identity and cultural values of and for the community. Now, the religious authority, these are the questions that we ask in method, right? So what's the authority? So that includes the Bible and the culturally influenced religious practice in the community and the community values as well. The Bible is seen as secondary to the cultural Christian tradition of Latinas, in which the popular religion and cultural practices are actually the norm. So the Bible is interpreted through this hermeneutics of suspicion, in which the truth of a text, and this would include the Bible, is determined by an interpretive model that transcends the patriarchal frameworks and allows for a vision of Christian women as both historical and theological subjects and actors. Now, this is going to sound familiar because other folks have named this as well. An interpretation of the Bible or tradition is appropriate, it's named as appropriate, if it is liberating to women and other oppressed people in the here and now. So we note that similarity and a little bit of difference with Rosemary Radford Ruether's critical principle of feminist theology, in which she says the critical principle of feminist theology is the promotion of the full humanity of women. So for her, if something denies or distorts or diminishes the full humanity of women, then it is appraised as non-redemptive. Now, for Ruether, that means it needs to be looked at critically. She doesn't just get rid of it, but she says it needs to be looked at critically. In the previous norm here, the Bible is interpreted in such a way that it needs to be liberating for women and other oppressed people now. Otherwise, we're suspicious of how it has been interpreted, or suspicious even of whether or not it should be an authoritative source. And I just want you to note the difference there. Reflect upon that for yourselves. So the emphasis for Diaz is is on the popular religiosity of Latino women and liberation theology. So how does it help liberate? How does it bring life and power and symbolic energy? I mean, real energy, not symbolic energy, but energy of that symbols and stories create to the struggle for liberation. That's what's most important, not the official Roman Catholic doctrines and scripture. An example of this it can be found in this, in the popular Latina liberation theology, is the identification of Mary as Our Lady of Regla. So now Our Lady of Regla, and this is Our Lady of Regla here, an image of Our Lady of Regla, is likened to, it's very similar to Yamaya, who is the goddess of the sea in popular religiosity. You notice they still have the watermelons, and you notice this, which is interesting because that's associated with Mary too, the moon. To me, it looks a little like the Starbucks image there. It makes me want some coffee. But you'd also notice there's a kind of openness to sexuality, whereas Mary has got so many clothes on, you can't even see that she's a woman or is she a person. It almost looks like she's looking through one of those things at the fair where you look through a little circle there. And you also notice it's strange, see the little baby here looks kind of like a little pudgy white kid, whereas the face here is much more Latina looking. Now, Mujeristic theology, Mujerista theology or Latina theology in Christianity is identified primarily, so most Latinas primarily identify as Christian, but this Christianity is perhaps a different Christianity than you or I experience, or different persons of different cultures experience. It is formed by the intermingling of Christianity with popular religiosity that comes from other traditions from the past of that particular culture, whether it's Cuban culture or Mexican culture or Puerto Rican culture. The popular religiosity is different from the Christian religiosity, but it is not alien to the core values of justice and love. And she names that as the core of the gospel message. Latin American culture is both symbiotic, Latina theology is both symbiotic with Latin American culture, and it is critical of Latin American culture. So the Latin American Roman Catholic religious culture includes this popular religiosity, and it is the structuring factor of Latina theology. Women join with each other for survival and to find greater strength together. They embrace, and this is an important part here, particularly there's an openness to, and not just an openness to, but an embracing, an enjoyment of this inclusion among differences among them, because they're from different countries originally. And this might seem, I mean, there's some popular movies that have, the clash between Cuban Americans and Puerto Rican Americans. And her argument here is that for women, there's an embracing of these differences, and embracing also a rebirthing and becoming anew in this new community, and a constant kind of rebirthing and becoming anew. Now, I encourage you to reflect upon any questions or comments, note similarities and differences between the Mujeristic theology and their methodology and other approaches that we've had to theology that you've read, and reflect also what are your methods of Christian theology, and maybe this view influences your your view either positively or negatively. You might say critically, oh, I disagree with that because of this, or it's incomplete because of that, or, oh, I need to change my way of thinking about it because I think she's very correct in the way that popular religiosity plays an important role. So I encourage you to reflect upon that, and we'll talk about that later.